Welcome to another episode of Growth Hacker TV. I'm Bronson Taylor, and today I have Mathilde Collin with us. Mathilde, thanks for coming on the program.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I think we're going to have a fun conversation today because you are the CEO of Front, which is the easiest way to manage team inboxes, and you all were actually a part of Y Combinator. So I think you've probably learned some tricks from them, learned some tricks from your own experiments, but you guys are definitely a great company to watch. So I'm personally excited about the questions and answers that are going to be taking place here. So let's start kind of with where you're at right now. Give us a snapshot. Where are you in terms of growth? Maybe users or companies that use you, something along those lines, so people watching know kind of where you're at in your journey.
Yeah, sure. So we started the company 2 years ago exactly. We launched a year and 3 months ago, and right now we are at over 1,000 paying companies, and we are in the team 12 people. So 4 salespeople, 8 engineers, no marketing,
Okay.
and that's where we are at.
That's awesome. So you said a year and how many months has the product been launched?
3 months.
Okay, so in 15 months, you're at over 1,000 paying users. So that's great. I mean, there's a long way to go, but that is an incredible start. And so let's dig into kind of how you got from zero to over 1,000 users. So, we love talking about different growth hacks on this show. What are some examples of some of the growth hacks that you did to get from zero to where you are now?
Yeah, sure. So first of all, it's not 1,000 users, but companies, and so then one company can have between like
So it's even
three
better.
users. Yeah, it's even better. It's like
Sorry,
really
I didn't mean to, yeah, to make it sound worse.
no worries.
Yeah, 1,000
No worries
companies
at
is the
all.
keyword. You're absolutely right.
Exactly. So and so I think we've tried tons of things to acquire new customers, and we've tried especially a few growth hacks, and probably two of them worked really well. So I'll describe one. I think one thing that's super specific to our business is that we manage team inboxes. So team inboxes is an email address like support, jobs, press at, etc. And one thing specific to those team inboxes is that they're public. So if you go on a company website, most of the time you'll see contact us at team@company.com. And so one thing that we've built is we've built an email scraper where we can say, for example, I want to see all the contact at address on the website Kickstarter, or I want to look at all the billings at address available on the first 100 pages of Google. And then we've just built a really small outbound email, and we've sent thousands of emails to those team inboxes every day. It's extremely easy. It takes like 10 minutes to have thousands of email addresses and to send them, and that works really well.
Yeah.
So that's one thing that we've done, and that has driven a lot of users and signups. Something else is a team inbox most of the time is redirected to several people within a company. So I email support at, and then maybe 30 people in the company will get this email. So one thing that we've done is instead of sending our welcome email to the user, we've sent it to the team inbox. That way, everyone in the team is happy to learn that someone is trialing Front app. So
Okay.
that's two things that we've done and that I think worked well for us.
Yeah, I really like those. I want to dig into those a little more. And so, you screen scraping, finding email addresses, and then the second piece of it is sending email to those addresses, the welcome email or whatever, so that multiple people are actually learning about Front. Okay, so on the sending of the email, you mentioned it was a simple email. And I think that's an important distinction because I see people do email wrong all the time, especially when it's cold email. They want to write a novel. They want to explain all the benefits and features, and please get in touch with me. Here's 13 other reasons you should use us. But you said it's a
Yeah.
simple email. How simple?
So super simple. Most of the time it's one or two sentences. So first of all, because it's so cold, we'll describe exactly what it does. So basically Front lets multiple people manage one inbox. That's all we want to do. And sometimes we'll just give a few examples of companies that use us, like Dropbox and Slack and General Assembly, Y Combinator, etc., just to make sure that those people know that it's a real product. But I don't say more. I think when you're targeting such broad audiences, I think you should just like write one sentence describing exactly what your product does. Otherwise, people will not read it.
And what's the call to action in that email? Is it reply if you have questions? Is it here's our link, we'd love to have you sign up? Is it get on the phone with one of our sales reps? You mentioned that was a part of your core team. What's the call to action?
So the call to action is book 10 minutes with me here. And so there is a link to book 10 minutes with me and not even with our sales reps. So I'm very
so you actually take the calls from the people that book the 10 minutes?
Yeah.
Are you using something like Calendly to kind of set up times?
Yes.
Yep. I've done something very similar to the hack you're describing, and it does work.
It worked really well. I think for them, they know that they will not have to go through the hassle of scheduling an event and just clicking like few clicks. So it works really well.
So I'm interested, why are you taking the call instead of the salespeople when I think you said you had 3 salespeople?
Yeah,
so
true.
What's the reasoning there?
So first of all, I think that it's more efficient when the CEO of the company writes the email, and then I feel bad if I write the email, I said book a meeting with me, and then I give it to someone else. So my call will probably be more like a qualification call, and 10 minutes is not that long.
Yeah.
And also I think in the company, I really like me and my co-founder to be very hands-on, so that then people have no excuse to be like super scrapey. So I like doing it. I always learn a lot from people that just discovered our product. And so as soon as I have, maybe at a point I won't have time anymore, but right now I can spend like maybe 4 times 10 minutes every day.
Gotcha. Makes sense. So here's an idea I had for another hack just based on what you're saying. So, you said you send to the team @ or support @, and that way it goes to multiple people in the company. One hack that any company could do is when somebody signs up for your product, Bronson @ growthhacker.tv, when you send a welcome email back to them, send it to Bronson @, but then carbon copy team @ support @, and then if it bounces, it bounces. If it doesn't, it doesn't. But if it gets through, multiple people in the company now see an exchange in email, which will just increase, the relevancy to the company and all those things. Just an idea.
Yeah, I think it works as soon as you CC the right email address, meaning that if you're a product that should be used within the whole company, you should probably CC team @. If it's a sales tool, you should CC sales @. If it's a support tool, support @. If it's a tool for community managers, maybe press @, etc. So I think as soon as you do that not to be too overwhelming or too spammy, I think that's a good hack.
Yeah, no, that's great. So let me ask you this. With all these growth hacks, one of the questions I always have is, it's clever, it's cool. Does it actually make up a large portion of those 1,000+ companies? So, not that you got to give us detailed numbers and your metrics here or anything, but in general, is this responsible for 10%, 50%, 100%? Give us an idea of how important this hack has been for you guys.
Yeah, so I think it's around 15% for us. Also, something very important that I think on growth hacking is, I think you will read a lot of things on growth hacks that some companies have done, and it's very tempting to try to maybe reproduce them or just tweak them a little bit for your company. What I felt is that for growth hacks, you should really think about what's very specific to your business and then capitalize on that. And I felt like most of the growth hacks that other companies have done didn't work for us. And so I think you have lots of acquisition strategies that have worked for people and that will work for your business. But in terms of growth hacks, really think about what's unique to your business and how you can capitalize on it.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I mean, we actually just finished up going through Techstars, and there were some growth hacks we were doing to grow our company while we were there. And there's 10 other companies in the room that were interested in learning what we were doing, how we were growing. And I was willing to show them exactly what we were doing. I was willing to help them as much as I could to actually implement it themselves. And the fact is, it didn't make sense for any single other company in the room. They couldn't do it, not because they didn't have the skill or the desire or whatever, or the resources. It just literally didn't work for their company at that point. That's true with so many hacks.
Yeah, agree with that.
No,
and then if you can't find anything that's like very unique, and that's, I think that's totally fine. You can use other ways to acquire new leads, but just testing growth hacks that other people have done is probably going to fail.
Probably. So, we've talked about a couple things that have worked. You talk about you have to experiment a lot. What are some of the things that haven't worked for you guys? Maybe it's because, like you just said, you were trying to imitate others, or maybe it's just ideas that you had that you thought would work and didn't. Talk about some of those.
Yeah, sure. So I think it's interesting. We've shared a lot of our learnings over time throughout our journey. And one thing that we're just starting right now in terms of content is a series about front fails. Because I think we always talk about what has worked, but we never talk about what has failed. And I think companies can learn a lot about those. So maybe this series will be a fail, but we'll try. Maybe the first two things that we'll talk about. First of all, we introduced a freemium plan, a free plan, so a freemium model. I think the basic reason why we did that is we used to have a very small free plan, 2 users, 1 inbox, and most of the people at a point upgraded to a paying plan. And so we thought, but then let's just have a big free plan, and that will drive new signups, and they will convert at a point. And that failed. I think the main reason is because people tried to fit in the free plan, and so they didn't get the full value of the product because it was so big. Every company was close to the free plan, and so they couldn't see any of our premium features and like automations and integrations and analytics, which are really key to our product. Also, because of the structure of our team, where we just have sales and not marketing, I think we wasted a lot of resources because the salespeople would spend time with people that in the end would not pay. And so it's very frustrating for them, and also from just a financial point of view, doesn't work for the company. And then for the tech team, we had like far more support requests because we had far more users, and we could not keep our pace. We tried to release new features very often, and so it failed. And so I think that's like the learning of that is think maybe 6 months from now on, because it was obviously a good idea to generate more leads, but I think then the question is like what happened next. So you have leads and they convert and they drive support. And some other companies have written about how they failed launching their freemium model. That's one example. Another example is we've thought too big. So we had this idea of creating communicatebetter.io, where we would partner with lots of companies in the communication space, and we would send one piece of advice every week, given either by us, but most of the time by other companies. So someone that was focused on cold emailing would give advice on cold email, or someone doing like a team chat platform on how to work remotely.
It seems like a great idea, so why didn't it work?
So it was a good idea, but I think, and so we launched it on TechCrunch, on Product Hunt, on Lifehacker, so we had lots of signups. Good idea apparently, but then it's so much work. Like just having one lesson to be sent every week is a ton of work, because if you want to have high quality content, you have to work hard with those companies to create those. We wanted to have a good design, etc., and we didn't have any marketing resource. So we failed just because it was like impossible to send one email every week. It was too much, and so we stopped it, which was like obviously a waste of resources.
Well, thank you for kind of diving into both those. I mean, I think there's so much there to learn from. You know, in the first example, you know, I found out that in my own life where early on in a company, like really early on, when it's barely past the idea stage, you can make changes and nobody's affected. But once you have 10 plus employees, changes that are just in the product are never just in the product. They show up in support and in sales and in just the overall experience. And so you have to like find ways to make all these departments work together with these changes. And that becomes a new hurdle for companies at the size you're at. So that's just a great thing to keep in mind. And then I like the second example too, you know, because there's so much we can learn from the idea that to do marketing well, you have to really invest. It's hard to get a bunch of results with very little effort. I know that's like the holy grail. Look, I did this one little thing and now I, you know, got a bunch of new users. The fact is, to get a bunch of users, it takes a bunch of work. And so just managing all those resources to make some marketing thing actually work, it's tough. Now we've talked about, you know, some different growth things, but for you guys, it seems like content and PR is a good piece of the puzzle for you all. So walk me through that. I mean, what advice do you have on content? What advice do you have on PR? What's some things you can share there that really worked for you guys? You just mentioned you were on TechCrunch and Lifehacker and Product Hunt, even for something that failed. I mean, that's hard to do.
Yeah, true. So I think content and PR are two different things. So on content, I think you said it well, you have to invest a lot of marketing resources. I've found that it's very tempting to be willing to rate a lot of content. So for example, one piece every week or every other week. What I found is I rate one piece every month, so that's not a lot. But I make sure it's really high quality, and so I have several people that review it, and I try to have the insights of experts, etc. So, for example, I've been reading about the future of email, or about our journey through YC, etc. And for each of the pieces that I've worked I have tens of hours on, they've been read tens of thousands of times or more. And also, that's when you write something really good, you can suggest a few guest posts and you can use it over time. So, for example, today, mailbox shut down. And so I used to have a post called "Why It's So Hard to Innovate in the Email Space." Because it's good, because I've been working hard on it. It's super easy today to suggest it as a guest post to a few either companies or medias. So one thing that I think we've done really well in content is we've worked hard on every piece, and we've just released one piece every month. But because it was good, we got featured on Hacker News, which drives thousands of visits to your website. We've been featured on, on Mattermark Daily. We've been featured in some newsletters from big VC firms or just big newsletters, and we've been able to use them again and again over time. So content, I think that's something that we did really well. Yeah. And the content doesn't have just an impact on user acquisition. I found that we've been able to hire really great people, and when I ask about why did you choose to join Front? You were at Dropbox. Front is a small company. We are French, and you decided to leave and come to work for us. And part of it was they really like our culture, and of course they don't know anything about our culture because they've not joined the team, but they've seen that through the thing that we've written. And I think both for your brand to acquire new employees and new signups, high quality content is key.
No, that's a great insight. Let me ask you this. I mean, I agree the quality just has to be there, and you as a CEO have probably the best chance of creating something that reaches that quality level. At the same time, it goes back to you taking the 10-minute phone calls. How do you gauge when something is worth it as the CEO? Even though you're getting results, could you get more results leveraging someone else? And it's a hard question. I mean, how are you going to know when it's time to hand the reins off of some of the hands-on stuff?
Yeah, I think it's all about, so I think right now I'm the public figure of the company, and so that's why I'm writing most of the articles. Of course, I ask for some help. And so there are a few employees or friends that are helping me in writing the content. I think we don't have a VP or a director of marketing yet. I'd be willing to have someone that's the public figure of the company. I don't want to keep that for myself. So as soon as we'll have someone else, I think this person will embody the company. So right now, I agree with you. I think it's time consuming, but I try to hire a few writers. They can. I just write the outline. They write the content, and then I say that's good, that's not good, and then have it reviewed by experts in the domain, and then that creates a good piece of content.
No, that's good. Here's a question I have: is people aren't necessarily, as far as I know, they're not looking for shared inbox solutions. I mean, I think about it it's hard for me to imagine going to Google and being like, I need a shared inbox. So how do you market when it's a real pain, but people don't know how to articulate the pain?
Yeah. So it's a good question. I think a few companies had this problem. So when you think about Slack, nobody was looking for a new team chat solution. which is hard. And so I think when you have a product that no one is looking for, it will be harder because typical acquisition strategies won't work. So we've tried to do some paying acquisition that doesn't work at all. Nobody is looking for 10 inboxes, shared inboxes, etc. So there are two things that we do. First, we try to test and learn a lot of different ideas. So that's by testing that we came up with this idea of email scraper or communicate better or like push this welcome email, etc. So you have to be more creative. Also, you have to sell something else than what your product does. So, for example, you can sell what your mission is. So, for example, Front, I think, brings a lot of transparency within companies. So it's easier to see other people's email, to share a user feedback, to be aware of the bugs happening in your team. And email transparency is something that's trending right now. So a lot of companies like Buffer and Stripe, they've implemented this email transparency policy.
Yeah.
And so we try to not sell the product, no one will, but sell like the mission and the benefits, so more transparency. And also when you have like something you can compare it to, I think that's like very compelling. So Slack now is used by millions of people. And what Slack has done for internal communication, we're trying to do the same for external communication. So you need to interact with your teammates, you speak on Slack, but you need to interact with your customers or your leads or your candidates or your fans, you speak on Front. And I think describing Front as Slack for external communication is another way to talk about your product without describing exactly what you do.
Yeah.
But I think it's hard. We didn't talk much about PR, but PR has been huge for us. So every time we've been able to talk about something, so we went to YC and then we raised the money and then we launched this new version and then we launched our iOS app and we launched Communicate Better and we are a French company that moved to the US and also I'm a woman CEO in tech and like all these things. We've tried to be featured on every TechCrunch, Lifehacker, Tech.eu, Wall Street Journal, etc. And my recommendation for people that are trying to do PR, you have this feeling when you're doing PR that you should wait for the right moment to be featured. So why not wait about this new feature that we are going to release in just 2 weeks? The product will be much better. And I think that's a big mistake. I think like you should, as soon as you have one opportunity to do PR, don't wait and do it. You will find other opportunities to do other stuff. So for example, on Product Hunt, we've been featured at least 6 times. And most people think that you can be featured once. It's true. But we had Front, and then we had Front for iOS. And then we had this free tool that we had built to analyze your inbox. And then we had Front 2.0. And then so I think what I mean is like, don't wait till you have till it's a good moment, because it's never a good moment. You always have bugs in your app, especially early stage. So as soon as you can, try to do some PR.
So that one hits home for me because I'm literally putting off PR right now on Growth Geeks because I feel like, but we're so close to it being so much better. So I'm going to take to heart what you just said. I think you're right, but it's hard for me for all the reasons it's hard for everyone else.
No, I agree. It's hard, and it was hard for me at the beginning, but now that I look back and I see how much PR we've had, whereas I don't know a lot of journalists, I think it was good that we went to YC, but I don't have a huge network, and I think what I've done is every time I had the smallest thing that could be announced, I jumped on the occasion, and sometimes they said no, sometimes they said yes, but as a result, I think we had a great PR coverage.
Yeah, that's great. Earlier we talked about the hack of screen scraping, and you said, 15% is probably, what it makes up. Where does content and PR fit in? Is that the bulk of where the users have come from?
So I think we ask, every time we have someone on the phone, we ask how they heard about us. So right now our analytics, because we don't have any marketing person, is not super accurate. However, I would say half of the remaining 85%, half of it is word of mouth. So we still have a lot of people that heard about us through another customer. Half of it is PR content.
Gotcha.
So I read about you on, on Product Hunt, on HN, etc.
Yeah, no, I love knowing kind of the breakdown like that, because then I feel like I get a sense for what is actually happening in the company in terms of growth. Now,
Yeah.
you've mentioned transparency in email a few times. Transparency, you mentioned Stripe, you mentioned Buffer, you guys are in that camp. The extreme transparency people, like you're having a blog about your fails. It doesn't get much more transparent than that. Another thing you've been transparent with is the public roadmap. And as far as I know, that's actually generated leads for you guys. So tell me, what is a public roadmap, and how does that turn into leads? And just give me some insights there on what you're doing.
Yeah, sure. So maybe 6 months ago, we were managing our roadmap on Trello, and then I saw that you could make a board public. And so you could limit the features, so you can say people can't comment, but they can upvote. And so what I did is just I made it public, and in the email that I sent to users announcing the new features, I just put a link with our public roadmap saying help us prioritize new features by upvoting the features that you want. So
Wow.
I just honestly didn't do it for like PR purpose or whatever. I just thought that for product management, it will be easier if I have insights from customers. So I tweeted about it and I said, here is our public roadmap, please upvote. And as soon as I tweeted about that, I had so many people that retweeted and talked about it. I think people were intrigued. And so, I don't know, like Stewart Butterfield retweeted it saying, I need to do that for Slack. And so, of course, then you have some coverage. So
Yeah.
Trello got interested in what we were doing. And so we were working on a blog post with them, and they featured us on their inspiration page, and they tweeted about us. And so I think our public roadmap, it was like a really good idea, not only for the leads that it created, but also for the trust that it built for our customers. Again, I have so many interviews where people tell me, oh yeah, I love the transparent culture that you have. I can see that your Trello roadmap is public. And I'm like, that was a tiny thing. I just clicked like, make it public. It's not a big deal. But I think the learning of that is do a lot of things, try to see what has traction. I was not expecting that to have traction, but it did. And once you have that, capitalize on that.
Yeah.
And over capitalize on that. Like you can do 3 guest posts with Trello. You can tweet about it every week. You can ask other people to review it on a guest post, etc. So that worked well for us. And
it seems like, to you, you're like, oh, it's not a big deal. I just hit go public with it. But that takes a lot of guts. I mean, yeah, it only took a few seconds, but it takes a lot of guts to try something, throw it out there, see what's going to work. And so I think what people can learn from it is that, yeah, it wasn't this really involved marketing plan. It didn't have all these contingencies. It wasn't a 3-month cycle thing, but you had the guts to do it and not overthink it. And that alone is a growth hack in itself, I think.
Yeah. I think transparency, everything you do, so sharing your roadmap, sharing your inbox, etc., is scary. So I think people are scared about sharing their roadmap. And so, for example, when I shared my inbox with my co-founder, the first time I clicked shared my whole inbox and all future emails, I was scared. And then now it's been 6 months, and I think that there are almost nothing bad that happened out of it. So like on a public roadmap, you could say, oh, your competitors will copy you. And on your inbox, you could say, oh, you might see an email that you didn't want him to see. But all in all, the benefits that came out of it were 1,000 times bigger than the bad things, small bad things that could have happened.
Yeah, makes sense. All right, so last couple questions here. These are kind of the fun ones that I always end with. So right now, as soon as this interview is over, what are you doing next? It could be super awesome or super boring. What's next on the agenda?
Like just after that,
as soon as it's over.
I need to launch our referral program. So I've been thinking about it. I think we've never incentivized our customers to share that they like Front if they like it. So that's what I'm going to do this morning.
All right, awesome. All right, last question. What's the best advice you have for any startup that's trying to grow?
So I think what helped me so much is that when I was at YC, you have these YC dinners every Tuesday with companies that seem really successful, like the founders of Stripe, of Facebook, of Optimizely, etc., etc. what I've learned is it's hard for everyone. Like there is no company that has been growing organically without like figuring out at some point how am I going to have new users. And I think just knowing that it's hard, it's been hard for everyone, it's still hard for everyone, makes a huge difference. Because then you take it for granted and you're not asking yourself, oh wait, it's so hard for me. But you just have to like try a ton of different things, and then at a point some things will work. And even when you reach a milestone, so you reach 1 million AR, and you think that, okay, no, we're good. We've been growing to 1 million AR, it means that we have something people want, then we need to figure out how to grow to 10 million, and etc. So I think just being in that state of mind that it's hard for everyone helped me a lot.
Yeah. You know what? I love that insight. I mean, I feel that all the time. And I'm like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. One day I'm like, oh, it's easy for them. And it's not easy for me. What's wrong with me? And then the next day I flip. And I'm like, no, it's hard for, like, I go back and forth on it. So it's encouraging just to hear you say it once again. It's hard for everyone. So now I can take a deep breath.
Exactly.
That's awesome. Well, Mathilde, this has been a great interview. You've been transparent, which was expected. You've told us exactly what's worked and what hasn't, and what kind of, what bulk of the business, where it comes from. And like I said before, though, I think the big insight that people should walk away with is your attitude toward growth and your fearlessness toward experiments. Even if they can imitate a specific or not, your attitude should be imitated. So again, thank you so much for coming on Growth Hacker TV and giving us a great episode.
No, thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.